Hello, welcome to Top Med Talk. I'm Andy Cumpstey and I'm here with my co-host Kate Leslie, and we're at the 7th Biennial Collaborative Clinical Trials and Anaesthesiology meeting in the very beautiful Prato in Italy.
Aren't we lucky?
It's fantastic, isn't it, Kate? It's a really nice, it's a fantastic venue, but also a really good buzz about the place, lots of amazing people, lots of really good conversations.
I've been lots of times, but this is your first time.
It is.
Yeah. Was it awe-inspiring to come, or did you?
I've not been to a meeting quite like it, I have to say, and I think the level of the presentations and the discussion and the questioning has been really, really impressive.
Yeah. Well, we've got some great people who've been giving presentations.
And I don't know if they know this, but I'm super excited. This is actually a bit of a world first for Top Med Talk, because we've got two biostatisticians with us today who I'll get them to introduce themselves, but we've never had biostatisticians on Top Med Talk before, so over to you two.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. I'm Jessica Kasza. I'm a professor of biostatistics at Monash University. I'm particularly interested in cluster randomised trials, but as a biostatistician, I get involved in all sorts of trials and work, which is wonderful.
And I'm Elizabeth, or Liz Ryan. I also work with Jess at the School of Public Health and Preventive Medicine at Monash Uni. I'm particularly interested in Bayesian adaptive designs and platform trials, how we can make trials more efficient. And I work across all sorts of disease areas, so I don't discriminate.
For our listeners who may have not worked with a statistician before or may have not come across some of the things that you do and they may just read the papers, at what stage do you get involved with the trial design, and at what points are you working with the clinicians in that process, and sort of what roles do you take in that?
Well, I suppose we can talk about what the ideal is and what sometimes happens in practice. Let's go with the ideal. So ideally, a clinician has a wonderful idea of something that's going to improve patient care, improve patient outcomes. As soon as they have that idea, they're on the phone or they're sending us an email talking about this, asking us what we think could be an appropriate way to test this idea. And then we're with them throughout the entire process, helping them design the trial, refining research questions, helping them design data collection tools, conducting the trial, obtaining funding, all of these things, all the way through to data analysis and writing up that trial and spreading those results around the world. That's what happens ideally. Liz, maybe you can tell us what happens in practice.
In practice, sometimes it's a couple of days before a grant application is due and they want us to do some sample size calculations. Sometimes it's doable. Sometimes if it's really complex, it's a bit stressful. But also quite often the trial is finished and they're like, I've got some data for you to analyse. Can you help out? I need it in 2 weeks for a conference presentation. Or, maybe they're struggling with recruitment. Things have gone wrong and they're like, hey, can you help us save this trial? And we're like, there's only so much we can do.
Obviously, I've never been in that latter group, of course, but I'm glad to hear that other people have already been in that situation as well. Can you maybe give us a quick summary about some of the trials you've been involved in or are working involved in the perioperative space?
Look, I've been lucky enough to work on a few trials with Kate Leslie here and also with Paul Miles. So currently with Paul, I'm the statistician for the TRIGS trial, so tranexamic acid for reducing infection for gastrointestinal surgery. I believe I got that right. So I've been involved with that trial since its inception. So Paul came to me nice and early and we discussed that. So with Kate, I've been involved with a few secondary analyses of trials that Kate has led and a few other little projects with Kate as well, which maybe we can talk about later.
Yeah. And Liz?
I'm quite new still to the perioperative medicine space, so I'll be working with Paul on his platform trial prompts, which he spoke about the other day. So there's a number of different interventions we're considering and hopefully adding new interventions over time. But yeah, he came to us, I think, 2 years ago almost now when he first thought of this design. So that's nice. So we've been trying to get the funding to get this up and started, and hopefully we'll start this in the next few months.
So I might come back to prompt in a second if that's okay. But just to pick up, Kate, obviously you've worked with Jess and potentially also with Liz on these other trials. From your point of view as the clinician on this side of the arrangement, the deal, what do you feel that biostatisticians add to the arrangement and how do they support you with the trial management?
Oh, well, they add everything. Like, there's no high-quality research that I think that can be done without one. A lot of us have got masters of public health, the clinician researchers. So we've done, a couple of years of biostatistics, and all that taught us was that we don't know anything about biostatistics and we need postdoctoral assistance. And that kind of leads into the question that I was going to ask. How do you become a biostatistician? Jess, what do you, for us, for our children and, for people who perhaps get into medicine and want to do something in the non-clinical area, what sort of things do you do at high school and university to become a biostatistician?
Well, the good news is there are a number of ways to get into biostatistics. The way I got into it, and I believe, Liz, you had a similar trajectory to me. I studied maths and statistics at university. So I loved those in high school. Was lucky enough to be able to continue working in maths and stats in uni. I enjoyed these things. I had no idea what sort of job I could get doing maths and stats at university. I thought maybe I'd be a high school teacher, which...
You would have been a really good high school teacher.
I think I would have found that a very stressful job, to be honest. But I kept going with it. I did an honours and then a PhD, and my parents were a little bit concerned because they weren't really sure what this would lead me to, that I could have a career. But then I just kept going with it. We managed to work with some wonderful mentors over the years who kind of guided me away from more theoretical statistics into more practical biostatistics, which is really valuable. As a biostatistician, I get to not only work with people on their trials, but think about the underlying methodology as well. And a lot of the ideas I get from my own methodological work come from working with people and their actual real-world problems they have with their trials. So that's how I came to be a biostatistician.
And just before we ask Liz, have you enjoyed getting to know stuff about health and medicine and visiting the operating theatre? How did you find that?
Well, look, there was a reason why I didn't go into medicine. It was an incredibly eye-opening experience. The one time that Paul Miles brought me in to observe a surgery, that was quite confronting, but it was incredibly useful to understand what people are talking about when they mention propofol or all these other drugs. I had no idea. So learning about the health context from the people who are working in this context is absolutely essential to us. There is no way we'll ever understand things as well as our clinical colleagues. But I suppose it's like you having a master's of public health. It gives you that sort of base level of understanding. You know that you need to ask more questions, and that's really valuable.
What was your trajectory, Liz?
I came from quite a sciencey STEM family. My parents were both scientists, and my sister was studying biotechnology at uni, and they're like, everyone hates statistics, but you're really good at maths, so you should do this, do a career in this. And I wanted to sort of be the interface of medicine and science and maths, somehow combine them. I didn't quite know about biostatisticians or medical statistics as a career. So I studied maths at university, and I liked the statistics, and I thought that's probably a bit more of an employable pathway rather than the pure maths. And I really enjoyed it. And I really liked medicine. I never wanted to do financial maths. I really liked medicine. I didn't want to follow that pathway because I like my sleep, and I wasn't sure how I'd be able to, interact with patients. So yeah, that's sort of the way I came to it. So yeah, I did a Bachelor of Science, majoring in maths, did honours in maths, and then did a PhD in maths statistics.
Women in STEM, fantastic. And you've been plugging that at an Australian national level in leadership roles in the Statistical Society, I think, Jess.
Yeah, that's right. So I was lucky enough to be the president of our National Society for Statisticians, the Statistical Society of Australia, from 2020 to 2022. In that role, I really got to understand and see a lot of the barriers that women face in getting into these more mathematical, statistical roles. And I think perhaps also try and remove some of those barriers and really shine a light on how important the contributions of women in statistics are and what great things we can do.
There's so much to pick up on from what you both just said, but let's start with you, Liz. And you said about people are afraid of statistics, or everyone's afraid of statistics. And I think that's a really powerful statement, but it's really true. And I work with a lot of clinicians. For example, I'm working with trainees working towards their FRCA exams in the UK. And a key part of that is some understanding some relatively simple statistics compared to some of the work that you do, but still very important statistics. And they find that really intimidating. But often it's because it's taught really badly. And when you spend some time going through the concept with them, they, dare I say it, at least understand it, possibly even enjoy it a little bit more. But then we start to get into more advanced statistics, such as the Bayesian models and things that you talked about, and frequentist designs. Where can people go to, if they do have an interest in it, where can they go to get that information?
There's some great online tutorials, and there's people like Richard McElraith who do their own online courses. There's 15 or 20 modules. So there's lectures and there's a book he's written, and you can follow along with that at your own pace. Or you could sign up to the online courses, and also journal clubs. So various different universities have their own clubs where they sit together every Friday afternoon. They'll watch these videos and go through and talk through these concepts as well. So I think that's probably the best starting point.
So in this meeting, we've talked a lot about clinical trial design already, and we can come back to prompt and platform trials in a second. But maybe, Jess, Liz, between you could just give our listeners a summary of the differences between a platform trial that we keep talking about and a standard RCT or a randomized controlled trial. What are the differences?
So in a standard randomized trial, we've got one question, one treatment, and we're trying to assess the impact of this particular treatment on some particular outcome for patients. So we'll randomize participants to receive the intervention and the control condition. So they'll receive one of those. So that's the standard approach that we take. But then platform trials become much more complicated, don't they, Liv?
Yeah, so there's no exact formal definition on what a platform trial is. Different people have their own definitions, but you're basically setting up a research infrastructure and pipeline to allow you to answer more than one research question. So you might start simple and just start with 2 treatments, but then have the intention to add further treatments over time. You might have multiple different dimensions of treatment. Maybe you'll be comparing different antibiotics or different antivirals at the same time, like with the COVID pandemic. Or maybe you have something embedded in registries as well. And instead of dismantling your clinical trial infrastructure at the end of the trial, you keep it and you can reuse it for future trials as well and keep on adding new research questions.
So we may have some people at home listening to this who say, so that's just something to fudge the statistics, isn't it? But that's almost more important to get those statistical basics right from the beginning in these designs, isn't it?
100%.
And that's where you guys come in. So should we talk about prompt as an example of a platform trial then?
Yep.
I just wanted to give a summary of what prompt is, what we might be looking at, and why it's better suited to that platform model rather than the standard RCT model that Jess has just taken us through very nicely.
Yeah, so prompt's intending to try and reduce surgical site infections. And so, with these kind of operations, you're not giving patients any one treatment. It's a whole care pathway that they have to go through, and there's different stages where you might need to look at different treatments. So we're hoping to start at looking at different oxygenation thresholds. So there's so much debate, even just within the guidelines, people are using this or recommending this and others using this and disregarding the guidelines. So we kind of need to figure out, okay, which is actually the more beneficial treatment? Are these things actually causing harm? And we're also planning on looking at blood glucose control as well, because there's often undiagnosed diabetic patients, and that can have all sorts of issues as well. So that's the sort of 2 different domains we're thinking of starting with, but with the plan to add future domains as well, because these patients are on many different treatments, and throughout their journey of care throughout the hospital, we might need to look at other things as well, pre-operative care and post-operative care, and during surgery as well.
So being able to add those different interventions in is an immediate advantage of the platform design. So coming just to the oxygen intervention as a start. So yes, you can look at it in the platform model through prompt, but there's been a number of other studies over the years that have looked at it in a more classical RCT design. So Paul's also done a Hot Rocks trial, for example, which might be merging into prompt. Why push that into a platform model? Why not stick with the RCT for that one intervention? What other advantages does that platform design give you?
So I suppose the platform trial design is far more flexible in that, the analogy that has often been spoken about is with a standard trial, you're building a new football stadium for every football match. This is what people say a trial is. You're setting up all of this infrastructure to answer a new question every time. With a platform trial, you've got your infrastructure there and you can just play a new game for every new treatment that you want to investigate, essentially. So I suppose this is the advantage of the platform. You've got this entire infrastructure set up, ready to go, ready to add new questions, answer new questions.
We spoke previously about sports metaphors.
Oh, yeah.
Jess, and we were going to abandon those in our podcast and use handicraft metaphors instead. So it's more like a patchwork quilt. You've got the background and you put the patchwork squares on it. Is that a good?
I like that. I do like that better. Being a keen knitter and handicraft person myself, I do appreciate this metaphor a bit more, and I think perhaps that's what we can start using instead of the football stadium one. So thank you for that.
No problem.
So I've got one more question following on from that quickly before we close, but whether it's a patchwork quilt or a football stadium or whatever analogy Kate lets me use, when we explain this to a patient, it can be quite an intimidating thing when someone coming up to you in that potentially vulnerable position, about to have a major operation, and all of a sudden there's a platform trial. Is it better for patients? Is it worse for patients? Does it not matter?
Look, I think these things are better for patients. We're able to answer questions more quickly for patients. We're able to come to conclusions about what is going to work best for patients in a more timely fashion than if we're, running a new trial for every new treatment.
But individual patients in the platform, there's been discussion at this meeting about whether individual patients are being advantaged by being in a platform, particularly the patients in the control group who may not become aware of what they missed out on or what they, failed to benefit from or what risks they missed out on as the trial goes along. I think that was a very interesting discussion.
I think this is a good point. I suppose it is critical to involve patients and consumers at the trial design stage, I suppose. So getting their input about what's acceptable to them in terms of participation in these big experiments that we run.
Maybe just to finish, what's been your highlight of the meeting so far?
The dinners are pretty good.
That's a brilliant answer.
But it's also just been really nice to meet all the clinicians because, a lot of these people I've only interacted with over email, or I just know some of the local Monash people. So it's been really nice to just meet everyone from around the world and put a face to a name and listen to the brilliant research everyone's doing.
I'm going to second that. I agree. It's wonderful to... I've been to this meeting a few times now, and it's wonderful to see what people are doing, how people have progressed in the research they spoke about a couple of years ago. It's just a really wonderful place.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both for giving up the time to come chat to us here on Top Med Talk. And it's a nice point to finish on, this power of conversation of everyone all in the same place, having these really, really amazing conversations about hopefully impactful and important changing projects going forwards. I'm looking forward to going back into the main auditorium and see what comes next. So thank you to Kate, thank you to Jess, thank you to Liz. You can obviously find us on our app, on our website, or our social media channels, and then we're going to get back to the main sessions.
Terrific. Thank you.
Top Med Talk.
Thanks for downloading Top Med Talk. Don't forget to subscribe, check us out on YouTube, and of course on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook and X. Also, it's important to remember that Top Med Talk is the broadcasting arm of EBPOM, evidence-based perioperative medicine. We'd love you to find out more about that, and the way to do that is ebpom.org. Check out our website and find out about some of the incredible conferences we're going to be arranging across the year. ebpom.org.